So could you tell everyone who you are?
Yes, my name is Dolly Ballard. I live in Madison, Florida, and I'm the past president of 3 years at the Garden Club.
Okay. And how did you come across knowing about the Torreya Taxifolia?
I had never heard of it before, didn't know anything about it, and in having programs for our Garden Club, I had made contact with a young lady who's very knowledgeable in butterflies, and her name was Virginia Craig. And she came over and spoke to our ladies at the Garden Club about butterflies. Well, I also do the youth gardeners at Pinetta Elementary School. And so I asked Virginia, I said, Virginia, would you be so kind if I bought you lunch, if you would do a program for 90 kids at the Pinetta Elementary School, which she did. And in driving back to Madison through town on Washington Avenue, which is also 53 North, I was passing a house that belonged to Mr. Brothers. And she said, oh my goodness, there's a tree. There's only one in Madison. And so I turned the corner and we went back and we got out and we looked at the tree and she told me a little history. And that was that. Well, I kept it in my mind and I said, I've got to learn more about this tree. Well, in driving around town, I always, to come to my home, I would go back and forth on Highway 53, and adjacent to the highway is the Oak Ridge Cemetery. That's the Madison Cemetery. And I observed 3 of these trees. Now, these trees are approximately 60 feet high. And they are just loaded with moss. So I said, that's a project we can do. So I had spoken to our new city manager and I said, welcomed him to town, and I said, I would like to meet with you and tell you about these rare trees that are extinct. And so he said, yeah, just call me anytime. Well, I've made up a folder since then and given it to him, showing pictures of the trees and the literature on it. And so hopefully we will have these trees cleaned out. But in the meantime, I have located a total of 6 of these trees in town. And let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Brothers. I'm almost 80 years old, and his wife, Mrs. Brothers, was a substitute teacher. Now, I started school in 1939, so I am figuring about 1942 or 43, when she taught us, is when these trees were planted. And I tell you why. This is only, if the truth was known, but I'm surmising this is what happened. Mr. Brothers was extension agent for Mayo, which is Lafayette County, and that is connected with the University of Florida, Gainesville, the Agriculture and Science Department. And I feel like they had these trees and he obtained them and planted them because his home faces west on Washington Street, which is 53 North, and Sumter Street. Well, 1 block in from his house is the Pepper home. And the Pepper home, and it's right across the street from the Catholic Church. I discovered one there. And then 1 block down from his house was Miss Martin's home. I think it belongs now to the Episcopal Church, this parsonage. And there's one there in that yard. So that, and then the 3 in the cemetery. So that's why I feel that Mr. Brothers is responsible for the trees in Madison. And that's rare, but this is considered trees that have been more or less grown in a private area where they have been nurtured, fertilized, and watered and taken care of. These trees here in Madison, I would say, are approximately 60 feet high, if not more. I do not know the circumference of the trunk, but they're about this large. Now this tree is a type of a cedar tree. It has very dark green needles. But what has happened now, a canker, well, it's like a disease like that we are used to, the pine trees. They get like canker sores, and they break off and rot off and fall, and that's why you have to weed them out. Well, these trees, there were, I think back then they counted over 600,000 trees. Well, nowadays, if we had a true count, we don't even think we have 200. I pledge, I try to make a promise that I will do my best to educate the people here, educate myself, and maybe good can come from it. And I'm planning on a trip with you tomorrow, Friday. Today is August the 16th, on a Thursday, and we plan to go over to the state park. Now, with what has happened on the banks of the Appalachian, on the east side, these trees are no higher than 3 or 4 feet in height. They're like little saplings that have grown off from the branches that have fallen, and they have taken root and sprouted. So it's going to be my first time for the visit to the state park. We're going to go over, and hopefully we can meet a park ranger and interview him, get more literature on it, and from there, we'll go from there. But I hope, I'm supposed to be a speaker at our October meeting with the Garden Club and the Women's Club, so we both have about 100 members. Some are duplicated between the two clubs, but to not only educate myself and learn more, but to share this information with others, so we can get on the bandwagon, and hopefully I can have an article put in our local newspaper and ascertain if there's others in the county that might have them planted in their yard. We just don't know, so maybe we can get a better count of the Torreya trees here in Madison.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate this. Hello, my friends in the Garden Club and the Women's Club. Today is a continuation of our filming as of yesterday. It's Friday. We are into Torreya Seminole State Park, which is located in the Panhandle, just south of Chattahoochee, Florida, and it's near Bristol, Florida. And we have the privilege of, and thank you, dear sweet Jesus, that we were able to meet up today and have the privilege of filming and interviewing the park ranger at Torreya State Park. He's not only a state park, but he is a biologist, and he has approximately 26 years with the state, and his name is Mark Mark, it is a pleasure to have you today, and not only girls, listen to this. I know how to pick the good-looking men. They all know, Mark, they all know me that I'm a flirt and I love men. I've worked with men all my life. But today, Mark has taken the time out, and we interrupted his lunch. So thank you, Mark, for joining us. And I would like to get you, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about your duties, the park, and this wonderful tree that we are blessed with Madison to have, as of now, 7 trees that are approximately 70 to 90 feet high. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, it's my pleasure to talk to you today. Madison is very fortunate to have probably the largest examples of Torreya trees anywhere in Florida, as far as I know. There are a few places where they have mature trees, like the Biltmore Estates in North Carolina, and they are actually propagating the trees at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. And the reason for that is that the Torreya tree is the most endangered conifer tree in the world, unfortunately. It is the namesake for the park because it has an extremely restricted range, basically occurs from here north to the Chattahoochee area, and that's its entire range in the U.S. There's another species of Torreya tree in California. You've probably heard of Torrey Pines State Park in California. That's in the same genus, but it's a different species. So the one that we have here is a kind of you might say a glacial relic sort of a species. It has an extremely restricted range, and unfortunately the population in the wild is down to just a few hundred trees. We have actually gone out on the park. The park is 14,000 acres, and we've scoured the entire park and GPS'd every last Torreya tree that still exists on the park. We've also collected tissue samples to be taken up to Atlanta so that they can propagate the Torreya trees up there and keep the species going. The problem is for the tree is that it's been attacked by a fungal blight which appeared in the 1950s, and nobody seems to know exactly where it came from. We've got a forest pathologist at the University of Florida looking at it, and he thinks it's a new species of blight. Why it all of a sudden knocked back the last of the Torreya trees in the 50s, we don't know. Prior to that, they were common. They used to use them to make fence posts, and it was common for them to reach this diameter, and they were actually harvested at one time. They were a very common understory tree species along the river, but now they're almost gone, and all the trees that are left are basically resprouting from rootstocks. So they get up to a diameter of maybe your thumb or a broom handle, and that's all they can do. They don't get large enough to reproduce and produce seeds. So they're unfortunately functionally extinct in the wild, and what's left out there is just resprouting rootstocks. So sad situation, but we're trying to work on it with Atlanta Botanical Garden, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has provided some funding to do more research on them and hopefully try and prevent their extinction, because they're kind of on the verge. They're the California condor of conifer trees, right on the edge of extinction, unfortunately.
In my position, this is my project now. I have fallen in love with this. I am anticipating on having cooperation with the newspaper to place an article in the paper to ascertain if we have other trees in Madison that maybe Mr. Brothers has given to, and they're on in people's residence. I will say this, the one at Mr. Brothers' house, which is on Sumter, on the side of his house, on Sumter in Washington, in fact, I have the tape measure to measure it, but at least it's the circumference of this. So I know the tree is at least over 60 years old and around 70. So It is a quite large tree, and these trees are just absolutely gorgeous, and I really feel blessed that Madison has this. We really love our town. It's a beautiful town, and we're trying to do everything to preserve it. So what can I do as a citizen that is concerned to share this and educate others in Madison?
Well, I think just what you're doing right now, learning about the plight of the Torreya tree and educating people that are interested about it, you know, helps the cause. And certainly, you know, supporting organizations like Atlanta Botanical Garden and University of Florida.
In other words, clubs like the Garden Club, the Women's Club, the Kiwanis, etc. If we have monies available that we could make donations to the Botanical Garden in Atlanta?
You could, yeah, you could if you wanted to. You could also perhaps talk to the landowners of the people that have these mature trees in Madison and try to maybe come up with some kind of agreement that the tree would not be cut down for some reason. You know,
that's a wonderful idea.
Get kind of a, what you might call a tree easement. I just made that up, but you could say, okay, this is a very rare tree, and here's a letter that we're going to write up saying that you know, the tree is part of this lot, and you and succeeding individuals that own this lot agree not to cut this tree down.
What I was impressed with in reading the information that we got off of Google was that it is a legend that Noah's Ark was built from this tree, this type of tree. So
right, yeah, the biblical reference talks about gopher wood, and that's one of the common names that's
gopher
used.
wood is, and what is the other common name, did we say?
Stinking cedar is another name for it, yeah.
But you know what? We smelled it today, and we didn't have it.
I think that's from the seeds, from the fruit.
Seeds.
Yeah, has a strong smell. Well, one thing to try to keep an eye out for if they do work on the vines and moss is have them be careful with herbicide, because there are some herbicides that I've used to try and kill poison ivy vines and accidentally killed trees with it that didn't get sprayed but were just in close proximity.
Oh no, we're against the herbicides, trust me.
Yeah, I mean, herbicides have their place. They're very effective at killing things like poison ivy and grapevines. You just have to be extremely careful that you don't get it on the tree. Even a small amount can, I put some on poison ivy vines on a loblolly pine that big around and didn't get any on the tree trunk, just on the vines, and it killed that pine tree.
Isn't that something?
That was next to the vines, so it's very potent stuff.
I noticed that on the sign there were 2 other rare trees that I'm not familiar with. Could you just cover a little bit about that, about the park?
Well, you may be referring to the Florida yew tree.
Yew tree, that's correct.
Which grows in a very similar habitat. Sometimes they're side by side with the Torreya trees, and they actually look very similar too. You can easily mistake one for the other because they're both conifers and they're both kind of small. But one way you can tell is by squeezing the needles like that, just kind of shake hands with it. And the Torreya tree is very spiky, whereas the Florida yew is smooth.
Smooth.
Yes, doesn't stab you when you squeeze the needles, but they are kind of similar looking. Also, the Torreya tree is a little bit more vertically oriented, where the yew is more prostrate, looks more like a shrub. One other thing that we've become aware of recently that you maybe could mention in your garden club group is that we're now monitoring in Florida for emerald ash borers, which is a exotic pest species. It's a beetle that came in wooden pallets from China. It's an Asian beetle.
Is that what
one
gets
of
into
many
the pine
examples
trees?
of an invasive exotic species that's come in from Asia, and we're now putting up traps around the park to try and monitor for it to see if it's actually arrived here. It's not known from this far south. But I have some brochures that I can give you to tell people about what the issue is, and the main thing people can do to try and prevent it from coming in is to tell people not to transport firewood around. You know, if you go camping and Georgia or Alabama or something like that.
Leave the
Buy some
firewood there.
Leave it there. Do not bring it here because this pest has not been found in Florida yet, and we're hoping it won't get here.
Okay. So it's not the beetle that has gotten into the pine trees and destroyed a lot of the pine trees?
No, not Torreya trees. That's a different problem, new problem.
Would you like to
ash
give...
trees, attacks white ash and green ash. White ash is a very important tree for construction of things like pool cues and baseball bats. That's what it's used for, and it's now going to be threatened by this new pest.
Oh, this has been so interesting in talking with you, Mark, but would you like to give a sales pitch for this park? We've been in awe all day with this tree. Oh, and it's just so beautiful, so peaceful. It seems to be out of the way, but it feels like you're really on vacation, and we're only an hour and a half from Madison. Would you like to give a pitch for this? And it's about your youth camp, too.
Yeah, well, I told you before, the park has grown a lot in recent years, and we're now up to 14,000 acres. We have miles and miles of hiking trails that people can go on. People come here to train for the Appalachia Trail when they want to, get ready, because we have, unlike pretty much every other park in the state, we have a lot of rough terrain, a lot of up and down hills and ravines and valleys, and so it's physically strenuous to hike our trails. So people like to come here and practice for doing the Appalachian Trail later on.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but we have youth camps, and we have the pre-Civil War Gregory House mansion that people like to come and visit. We do tours of that, and it's furnished inside with period furniture and other relics from the pre-Civil War plantation days. So there's a lot to see here. Personally, I like being here in the wintertime. It's a little hot right now in midsummer to hike the trails, but in January and February, December, it's great time of year to hike the trails and get out and see things.
We were so intrigued by the fact that the Gregory House was transported here from another location.
Right.
It must have taken days to get it transported here.
They actually disassembled it piece by piece, numbered all the pieces, put it on a barge, and floated it across the river.
Oh, that's how it was done.
And then reassembled it. This is back in the...
But the terrain is so deep, it must be 100 feet drop.
Yeah, that's right. It's about 80 feet vertically. They had to drag it up that hill and reassemble it on the top of the bluff.
And folks, what a beautiful view. Marge and I just sat down there and just went, oh, this is heaven. It's just an absolutely beautiful view. So is there anything else that you think that we should know that we might not have covered?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Well,
Y'all just need to come visit us again.
Oh, absolutely. This has been a great day. I feel like I've really had a vacation today when I'm only an hour and a half from Madison. And this is located south of Chattahoochee and southwest of Marianna.
Just north of Bristol.
In Bristol.
Off of Highway 12.
Off Highway 12. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
God
welcome.
bless you, and this is a pleasure.